Hey there everyone, Mr. Lewis here. Good to see you. I'm really excited to start with our final unit of AP Human Geography today, which is called Urban Geography, or the study of cities. I really think you're going to like it, but before we get into that, I have two long-term things that I need to talk about. One is your final exam. Remember, in this course for this semester, there is no final written exam. The final exam is your final project, the website project that you've been putting so much time into throughout the year. All that time is finally going to pay off because it accounts for 20% of your second semester grade. And that's a good thing because it's entirely within your control. So make sure you're checking in on that website, doing little things to make it more organized or visually friendly or informative, and make it look professional so that you get a solid grade on that final project. The other item is your AP exam. Some reminders about the AP exam. It's going to take place on Friday, May 28th, the very last day of school. It will take place on the computer. Finally, we're going to have a desk, a spot here in Crown Point High School on that day for every single student who is registered to take the AP Human Geography exam. You will get some communication from me very soon asking you if you would prefer to take that exam at home. At that point, please let me know through email if that is your preference so that we can get that set up for you. So, if you have any questions about that, please let me know. Otherwise, let's dive into urban geography.
So as I mentioned, urban geography refers to the study of cities, and we're going to take a look at these first three sections today: the origins of urbanization, cities across the world, and then the impact of globalization on cities. So first of all, the origins of urbanization. The origins of any city can be traced back to two key factors: site and situation. Site refers to the physical characteristics of that specific location, the physical landscape, whereas situation refers to the surrounding features of that particular location. For example, many of the earliest cities we find in world history were developed along bodies of water. So site and situation contribute to not just the origins of a city, but also the overall function of the city and the potential growth of that city. As the city continues to grow, some other features that have a large influence on the dynamics of that city and its population are things like migration. For example, in the city of Chicago, there's a very large Polish American population. Now, this contributed not just to population growth in Chicago, but also the cultural landscape of the city. Some other factors that might contribute to early growth and development in cities are things like transportation and the infrastructure required for transportation and urban growth, which can lead to population growth, which can lead to more economic development, and on the growth cycle goes. So that leads us to today, where we have cities across the world that have booming populations, both in core countries and in the periphery and semi-periphery. And we have labels for these booming populations. One is what we call a megacity. A megacity is an urban area, a metropolitan area that has a population of over 10 million people. So London, England would be an example, about 14 million people. Manila in the Philippines would be another example, about 16 million people. Moscow in Russia, about 20 million. And when we get to that 20 million marker, now we're at what we call a metacity. A metacity is a massive metropolitan area with more than 20 million inhabitants in its population. New York City is an example. They're around 20 million. New Delhi in India is about 30 million. Tokyo, Japan, about 37 million. And the fact is, some cities are better suited for this type of growth than others. And some are more capable of what we call suburbanization, urban sprawl. Suburbanization is the movement of people from the city center or the actual urban center to areas just outside the city, what we call suburbs. And through this process, a region experiences what's called urban sprawl, the outward growth of a city and its population. So you can see in this picture down here, urban sprawl taking place. We've got on the left a city in the background in this picture, and then all this green space, undeveloped area, right? But years later, here's the city again, and this green space is full of developed landscape. So this is what we call urban sprawl, the spread of not just an urban setting, but into the suburbs as well, just outside the urban center. This can also lead to what we call decentralization. Instead of having one particular urban center where all the focus is placed, there's a decentralized environment, creating different centers and multiple centers of economics, of business, and of population growth. So decentralization can occur as a result of urban sprawl as well. Finally, through these urban processes, we have the creation of things like edge cities, which are pretty large populated areas located just along the outskirts of an urban center, or the edges. That's why we call them edge cities. We also have the development of what are called exurbs, typically high-income areas located beyond the suburbs. And then finally, we have the creation of boom burbs. A boom burb is simply an area that is experiencing rapid growth and rapid urban sprawl out on the edges of a major metropolitan area, and they become an economic force in their own right. You can see from this map that many of the exurb areas that are growing right now in terms of population around the country are located in places like California, New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, Florida, Texas, a lot of retirement communities in the southern region of the country, but also in some of these major metropolitan areas such as New York City. Finally, where does globalization fit into this process? As globalization continues to influence not just specific countries, but specific cities in the 21st century, we can see this play out in the cultural landscape. When you look at a picture like this, you can see just down a couple streets in this urban center, all of these different advertisements from different companies around the world. And this is the impact of globalization on the urban cultural landscape. But we also have the creation of what are called world cities. A world city is essentially a meeting ground for international affairs, whether it's business, economic, or political. We have different cities that have come to serve as kind of that central meeting ground for international bodies. And New York City is commonly ranked toward the top of lists of world city rankings, if not number one, when it comes to this category. Now, how do we rank a world city? What does that mean? This particular scale that you see here is using 5 different metrics. Political engagement, so geopolitical, international political affairs. Cultural experience, so is it welcoming to all cultures? Information exchange, do they have the proper infrastructure for information exchange, communication, transportation? Human capital, so basically, are the necessary skills there? Are the necessary people there? And then finally, business activity, the economy. So New York City ranks number 1 on this list as of 2010, followed by London, Tokyo, Paris, Hong Kong, Chicago, Los Angeles, Singapore, Sydney, and rounding out the top 10 is Seoul. So kind of interesting to see which of these cities around the world serve as the center for international communication and cooperation. Finally, and this is where we're going to end things today, an emerging city is a city typically found in periphery or semi-periphery countries that is starting to boom in terms of population, in terms of international interest and investment, in terms of business and international cooperation. So in every way, it's starting to take off. But the thing is, when you experience this kind of growth, like we see Bogota, Colombia experiencing, where in the year 2000, there were only about 6 million people, and as of today, there are over 11 million. When you experience that kind of growth, how do you meet the challenges that come with it? How do you create the housing that's required of a growing population like this? How do you create enough job opportunities for people to sustain their income and therefore quality of life? How do you create enough for everybody? How do you create the infrastructure to support this many people? It takes a lot of planning. And that's exactly what I'd like you to take a look at today, is Bogota, Colombia's plan for sustainable growth, for sustainable development. As they continue to expand at this rate, how can they do it in a sustainable fashion where they're not damaging the environment through human waste, through human pollution, right? We pollute. Every human pollutes. Every human has a certain carbon footprint. So if your population is increasing at that rate, how is the local environment going to be able to take that? We need to plan for these kinds of things, not just economically and socially, but also environmentally. So please, in Buzz, take a look at Bogota's growth plan. There's a link to show you their slides, their PowerPoint presentation that goes with Bogota's Sustainable Development Growth Plan. And I'd like you to use those slides to answer the 10 questions that are located in that activity. So once you're done with that, you're good for today. Tomorrow, I'd like you to do some vocab to go with Unit 9. And then on Thursday, we will continue with urban geography by taking a look at Section 4, size and distribution of cities. And we're going to be looking at Mexico City a little bit on Thursday. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day, everyone, and I will see you next time. Bye.